have Farmer Joe from Pups. You are founder. Tell us a little bit about where, what, and why, and how.
I don't really like to see myself as a founder, much rather just someone who started to bootstrap this fair launch token. I've been on the Bitcoin ecosystem since really day one on the ordinal side, so it's been really interesting to watch this mature and grow. And so
You've been around for quite a while in the space and you've done your time in the trenches. How has that actually affected your life in general?
thankfully, the community is self-sufficient. I wouldn't be able to do this solo, quite frankly, because
Blockmates Orange is sponsored by Core Network, the ultimate Bitcoin-powered EVM-compatible blockchain. Learn more about Core at blockmates.com.
Welcome back, everyone. Happy 2025. All the best for the new year. Our first recording of the new year, and I'm very pleased to have Farmer Joe from Pups on the podcast. And yeah, I mean, this is a long time coming. Blockmates community love the Pups. You know, we saw the birth of Pups. We saw the bridges into Solana. You know, it's been a long road, and it's really cool to have you on, Joe. Welcome. It's good to have you, sir.
thanks, Jedi. Yeah, it's been great. I mean, I've been on the Bitcoin ecosystem for, I guess, since really day one on the ordinal side. So it's been really interesting to watch this mature and grow. Happy to kind of like give you the background and history or whatever else people need to know. And by the way, I think it's really commonly maybe misunderstood, but Pups is separate from Bitcoin Puppets. Blow Puppeteer is the artist there, so it's not an NFT collection, but it's a community meme coin. To be more specific before we get started.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Glyph. Glyph is a non-custodial decentralized exchange operating on the Core Network. As you know, we've spent a lot of time focusing on Bitcoin DeFi on this podcast, and essentially what Glyph is doing is replicating what Uniswap has done on Ethereum. So they are obviously dedicated in developing a sustainable and innovative DEX on top of Bitcoin, much like Uniswap, and just taking this whole Bitcoin narrative to the next level. So they've got a unique non-custodial approach which allows users to retain ownership of their Bitcoin while enjoying the benefits of a decentralized exchange experience. Their website is glyph.exchange, and you can go and trade a variety of assets there like BTC, USDT, USDC, and a lot more. Go check them out. Cool. Thank you for clarifying that. So you are founder, is that correct? Tell us a little bit about where, what, and why, and how.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I don't really like to see myself as a founder. Much rather just someone who I guess started to bootstrap this fair launch token. And so yeah, the where and why. So I can give you a bit of a history. So around like April 2023, there was this collection called Opium, and it's a Genesis collection that preceded Bitcoin Puppets, which came later in December of that year. And so I just gravitated to this art because it was mimetic. The community was extremely funny and just memeing everything. And so, you know, I'm an on-chain trader of NFTs, meme coins, tokens, utility tokens, DeFi, and so forth. But this is really like one of the first few purchases where I bought it because it's funny. And this seems to be the most common key to success in everything that I buy is, you know, if I think it's funny, comedic, it means it's viral. And if it's viral, it means people care. And if people care, it means people will do something with it. And so in April 2023, BRC20 was just getting off the ground. And there was this group chat in the Opium Shed, we called it, with about 150, 200 of us holders of the Opium collection. They were very active in chatting. It was a close-knit community. And, you know, I was inscribing a bunch of these BRC20s at the time and these funny like 4-letter tickers and trading them and flipping them and doing all sorts of things with them and speculating as the euphoria started to hit. And I had this idea in that group, and I'm like, hey, you know, like I didn't even clue in that communities of NFTs have their own tokens. This was, before this meta even played itself out. But I thought, hey, like we have the ultimate meme community here. We have the meme lords of all meme lords on Bitcoin. Um, and I just proposed this idea, like, why don't we just inscribe our own token? Like, I'm happy to pay for it. I'm happy to do this. Most people were not technically savvy on the BRC20 side at that point in time. Marketplaces were still far few in between, and it was kind of a collective action. Like we decided like the original BRC20 token supply, we decided the original ticker name, and we settled on Pups with a supply of 7.77 million, which was an ode to the original 777 OPM puppets. And we did it. Like it got out there, and some people, started to inscribe it. It was kind of do it if you like it, see where it goes type of thing. And we got to about 12 or maybe even 13% of all tokens, between the hundred of us or so. So it wasn't like an instant hit. And then I really was stuck with this idea. I'm like, look, like it needs an X page, it needs a website. This should be like Bitcoin's meme coin, and it should be the community meme coin. So had a friend, he put together the original website. I asked the puppet to make some art for the project, and he happily, agreed to make some drawings for Pups as an opium puppet. Although he'd never really like formally supported the token itself. He's always been no token, just art. So this is entirely community driven at this point. And I really liked the idea of Bonk and doing an airdrop. But the problem is there was no tooling on Bitcoin that enables you to do an airdrop at the time. And quite frankly, there's never been a token outside of Pups which didn't airdrop to a larger community. And so I got in touch with the Ordinals Wallet team. Harry over there and I were close friends in kind of the trenches. They did some stuff for me, inscribed some personal things, and I'm like, hey, if there's one team that knows how to do this, it's got to be Harry. And Harry at Ordinals Wallet was like, this is pretty big. Like, you're asking me to airdrop to 1,500 addresses, but I know they already did this. They already did this with their Pepe collection. I forget what that's called. Yeah, the original Pepe collection to some of their early users and early Ordinals Wallet traders. So I knew they could do this. It was just a question of how. And once Harry indexed all of the collections that I chose to airdrop to, kind of the OG sub 10Ks, yeah, there was an airdrop to the original Pepe's as well as each and every opium holder for every single opium received one airdrop. So yeah, that's kind of how we distributed about 25% of the supply. I didn't want to give away all of the supply, because I still wanted to remain it to be publicly accessible. And so at that point, we had probably 2,000, close to 2,000 original holders. And it was at like 38%. And from that point on, it took maybe an hour or two to mint everything else out. So we got to that point. Great. Then built the website, started to trade up a little bit, nothing too crazy. But to me, like it always just felt like the first meme coin on Bitcoin because it was meant to be a meme, right? It was targeting meme lords. It was targeting a viral community. And this is why, like, when I originally stated, like, Pups is the first Bitcoin meme coin, I meant it in the way that it's the first one that is intentionally funny. It's the first one that is intentionally going to a viral content engine of funny creators. And so this gets us to, let's call it February of 2024. It trades as a BRC20. It's there. It's out there. No big deal. And around the time of December of 2023, I was following Casey's work, and he was interested in doing runes. I spent some time with him in person. as well, at Art Basel, at a Hacker House. And I'm like, look, like I'm starting to feel a lot more optimistic in Casey. He's built ordinals. I think he can build a very simple token standard that is, as close to how Bitcoin operates. And I think meme coins and I think tokens on Bitcoin should operate like Bitcoin operates, in a UTXO solution. So if we solve the pay-fi roots for Bitcoin, we in theory solve them for any token standard that is lives breathes exactly like Bitcoin does in a UTXO based model. Um, so I think there's massive effects to be had over a long period of time simply because people care about Bitcoin, and that work and that progress translates to every single runes based meme coin asset. So, I was thinking, and I'm like, like we have to do something. I got to do something. Like this token still trades as a BRC20, but I genuinely felt that it was either going to be death or not. And it was also at a time when Bitcoin Puppets as a community, it was a 10K plus one, 10,001 collection. And I'm like, look, we have this amazing meme coin called Pups, but we don't have the activation of the Bitcoin Puppet community. So my thinking was that, okay, so we can do a migration to runes. We can fix the token supply amount to make it more, in line with what a meme coin should have, a billion, 10 billion, 100 billion. And I let the community decide, quite frankly. They like the billion, and I'm like, sure, well, let's go with the billion. And basically made an announcement sometime maybe January or February of 2024. I'm like, here's the plan. There's 4 steps, and I'm going to execute on these steps. Step one, Pups is going to migrate to the Rune standard. Step two, there's going to be an airdrop to Bitcoin Puppets, which then allows you to claim, X amount of tokens, which will be future. I'll decide this at a later point as far as public information. Step three, we're going to try and make this the number one meme coin on Bitcoin. And step four, we're going to become the number one meme coin on Bitcoin. It's just, that was my framework. That was my rubric. And, I knew there was this bridge that existed to Ethereum. And it was at the time when Solana meme coins were really, really picking up. And I really like Solana. It's a high performance chain, lots of trading activity, lots of DeFi, lots of, users. And Multibit reached out and they were just like, hey, like, so we're thinking about making a bridge to Solana. We think it might work for you. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I love Solana. I use it. I think meme coins are great there. Let's bring Pups to Solana. And ultimately it was still as a BRC20. They did have support only for BRC20. They currently have support for runes as well. But for me, like it was let's give this a shot. Let's give pre-runes, because that's what the BRC20 technically was at that point in time. Let's bring pre-runes as a liquid pre-rune on Solana. And it caught the attention of basically, the key man of CT, which was Ansem, and he liked it. And it was at the time of NFT week where word was spreading. I was, around at some of these NFT parties, and people were like, "Dude, like you got to check Ansem's like live stream. You got to go on it right now. Like he's talking about Pups." And I'm like, "What do you mean he's talking about Pups? Like Pups is trading at like, 10 mil market cap." And they're just like, dude, no, like it's up, like it's climbing. And I'm like, holy smokes, now it's at 40, now it's at 50, now it's at 100 mil market cap. Now it's trading at like 200 mil market cap. And it was just a euphoric, success, I would say like validation that, okay, like Bitcoin Puppets are the best cross-chain NFT out there. They're the funniest community. You have the most amount of builders. You have the most amount of people that are in the trenches. You have a lot of people that care about Bitcoin that are rocking a Bitcoin Puppet. They are just iconic MS Paint art pieces that are so unique and so lovable. And that then we certainly had this wave of euphoria, and I never really expected a token, and this token started to trade up all the way to $1 billion in market cap, and I'm like, holy smokes, like this is getting a little bit out of hand. Like now I'm starting to get nervous. I'm like, I said that I was going to migrate a BRC20 to runes. I'm most certainly going to try and do that as best as I can. I know the right people to get that happening. Um, and when runes came out, of course, it was like a few months after, and people were like, oh, like when is the migration going to happen? And then it was basically 2, maybe 3 months of really like building the infrastructure to make this work. Um, Worked with a handful of providers, both on the Bitcoin side and on the Solana side. Interviewed basically every single Runes bridge operator out there, and settled with a team called RuneMine for the new Sol bridge. Very competent team, really like developers, really like their philosophy of security, and yeah, I mean, I think post halvening block, etched the $1 billion supply, etched the Pups world peace ticker in the first block with my friends at Luxor. So again, I knew that I could execute on this end to end, and I'm not really doing anything outside of executing on my original February tweet saying, "Hey, this is my plan. Like, I'm going to be able to do all of this." And at this point in time, I've delivered on this. Of course, there's more to deliver on. Um, Happy to jump into those, but for me, like Pups is an asset that I think that for me is important to proliferate itself in all of the on-chain DeFi on Bitcoin, all of the applications on Bitcoin that are coming, but also integrated into cross-chain ecosystems like Solana, like maybe some future Bitcoin L2s. And down the line, I think there are some really interesting things that can be built around, gamification and so forth, and burn models more similar to like how Bonk does it, to start burning off the supply. I think that's always been the philosophy of Pups ever since the migration. So you had an unclaimed amount from the pre-rune ordinals. Those were just burned, and Satoshi has those. There is like 7% that was unclaimed from the BRC20 migration, and we extended it multiple times. There's quite a lot of I think I received quite a lot of like hateful messages, but it wasn't like so many people that were affected by it. So I think most of that 7%, I would say probably 6%, if that, is likely just in dead wallets anyways. So it's not necessarily, yeah, it's not necessarily malicious. It's just, look, I had to cut things off because service providers and custodial partners, they don't really want to be custodying an asset that is worth $1 billion and holding a set amount of tokens. And then even for me, I don't want them to be holding the supply in any way, shape, or form. I want to get rid of that risk element, that attack vector. And the only thing that I want is the asset trading on Bitcoin, a bridge that works to Solana, and the asset to be integrated on both of those two chains. Where we go thereafter, TBD, but there's a lot of directions to undertake. So I think the core focus right now in the near term is, um, run it like any single token project, which means secure market makers that are able to create volume and liquidity on centralized exchanges. Work with centralized exchanges to get a listing. And of course, there's some hurdles with that, as a lot of centralized exchanges are just not equipped to list runes just yet. But there are some that are very open minded towards it, and working in that direction, and some that have full integration like OKX Gate and Mexi. So yeah, that's where we're at today. I know it's been a long ramble, and happy to really dive into any points from day zero, day one, day two, and today, and the future.
So, I mean, you've been around for quite a while in the space, and I believe that you've done a lot of angel investing and kind of like you've done your time in the trenches and continue to do so. How has this project, and it's very clear that you've been very strategic in the way that you've approached it, and I assume it takes quite a lot of your time. How has that actually affected your life in general? I mean, I know that it's, yeah, I mean, is it kind of like full on all the time, or are you kind of like having to take time out and, take care of all these things?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully the community is self-sufficient. I wouldn't be able to do this solo, quite frankly, because I'm not a single man show here. But there's so many people that actually care about pups that are just working for their bag. So in a sense, it is a community-run project. The socials. It's not just myself. There's a handful of people that contribute to the socials. There's a handful of people that contribute to the Telegram. There's a handful of people that contribute to partnership ideas, content creation, and so it's a living and breathing thing. I never really thought that I'd get to this point in my life where I'm a meme coin founder by accident per se. Um, but I think I care about this because it's not often in the world that you could be basically seeing something survive one from like April 2023 all the way to now. There's not a lot of tokens that have survived. So I'm part of the camp that has a token that has survived, lots of volatility on the upwards and downwards, and people still care. And at the end of the day, I still care because I see this massive opportunity to do something fun. As far as like time commitment, I think it was genuinely way more back in the summertime post happening because there was significant amount of management to be done with technical partners, making sure that the user experience for migration looks and feels a certain way, debugging every single request, replying to tickets, and just being right there and in the center of chaos, quite frankly. These days, it's a lot more hands off. I still do angel investments. I still have, I guess, a job, so to speak. I guess as a pseudo entrepreneur, trader, advisor, consultant, whatever you want to call it, in the I would say predominantly in the Bitcoin space. But I love, learning and playing around with good products on any chain, and I think that's what I'm trying to do here with Pups is, down the line, I'm thinking about, how I can create a product around the burn functionality. That's kind of like the T plus 2, 3 months, like the centralized exchanges part. That piece is pretty easy. It's not doesn't really require too much of a day-to-day lift. The content creation side, I think that's in the hands of the community, and thankfully, it's a vibrant community that creates content on a day-to-day basis, memes on a day-to-day basis, anyways. Um, and I wouldn't be able to do it without some of the people that were there on day one and still believe, on day, 180, 365 for a lot of people, um, 600 plus for quite a lot of these people too. So I want to give a shout out to everyone that's been contributing, Def Nuts, Anna, Sin, Bitcoin Ganja, you name it, everyone in our little moderation group, admin chat. It's a collective beauty. I think that's really the long story short here. And I don't know if any other meme coin project really has been transparent in who runs it or who contributes to it.
Mhm.
There's some that do it better than others, but the Solana ones just feel like a black box oftentimes.
Yep.
Like who Giga is one of them that the core contributor is quite apparent. But there's maybe dozens of meme coins that are in the hundreds of millions of market cap that you try and figure out who runs a Telegram group, you try and figure out who runs the community content or the socials, and no one's gonna give you a clean cut answer.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm happy to be public about it because I got my reputation on the line as someone who cares about this, and it's not something that I see myself walking away. I have every intent to genuinely make this, to me, like a success story would be a multi-billion dollar token. And the moonshot case is get to the prophecy, which is 13 billion. Of course, that depends on public adoption, accessibility, and everything else, and the Bitcoin ecosystem thriving on its own. But I think we can get there. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think that was at least at some point possible.
So at what point did it shift from I'm going to do a project and wow, I'm going to make a whole lot of money, and now I actually care about the project? Because there is that dynamic that obviously plays out, and I don't think many people, especially founders, admit to obviously the money element. And it's like, but I'm asking you this question because I think I'm going to get an honest answer here.
I think for me, like this is now, like, to me it's more of a competitive aspect more than anything else. Like
Okay,
I'm doing this to try and get Pups to be the king of the hill, and I think I have the right relationships in this space to get that possible. Um, so it's yeah, sure. There's a monetary aspect to it as well, but I think the short answer here is, I've done reasonably well with trading NFTs and trading other meme coins, and just being early in Bitcoin DeFi and other chains and so forth. So this is just kind of a cherry on the top, and it's almost like I'm doing it as a victory lap. I certainly don't have to be doing this, quite frankly, but
cool.
it's a passion project, I would say, is more than anything else. It's the ability to be the king of the hill here and to do something cool and to make an impact on the blockchain, and especially make an impact on Bitcoin. I wouldn't be doing this if it was, making an impact on Monad or Arbitrum or Optimism. Like, it's cute, but Bitcoin, to make an impact on Bitcoin, to me is uh, much more satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, I think this also affords me the opportunity to get into this discussion around kind of like this maximalist perspective and how it should be versus obviously the way that we appreciate the space with ordinals and runes. And there was obviously a lot of debate and a lot of hate as well that went with that from so-called maxis. What was the message that you told them then and continue to tell them in light of the fact that, like, Bitcoin is expanding, if that's the way you see it as well? And what was the essence of potentially your argument around people that came
Look,
to the
I think if you want to be a maxi, I'm not even going to bother trying to, advocate and convince you that this is the direction that Bitcoin is going to take. I think, look, if I have to spend hours of my day, hours of my week, or even months to convince three or four Bitcoin maxis that this is a direction that Bitcoin is going to take, what is the point of that, right? Like there, I'm all about, like, efficiency and KPIs. Like, if we can just make the ecosystem better and we can bring something new to the table, we can bring thousands of people in a single day.
yeah.
That's a much bigger impact than anyone going out there and battling maxis just for the sake of drama. So I've never been one to be argumentative or even entrenched or even active in, like, the Bitcoin maxi community. Quite frankly, I was never a part of that. I was always much more progressive. I think I carry the views of someone who is like a progressive technologist and an experimenter. And so I'm all for experimentation. I'm not, right, quite frankly, I'm not thinking about, obviously I care that we don't break Bitcoin, but I don't think what we're doing is breaking Bitcoin in any way, shape, or form. I actually think it's contributing to network fees, it's contributing to fun, it's contributing to awareness, it's making Bitcoin now equivalent to smart contract chains out there, um, that people care about. Programmable money, like the whole point of this is programmable money, and I think just by doing silly things like programmability for attention assets, meme coins of value, ordinals, there's more spillover effects to Bitcoin than people I think see at this point in time. Is that going to upset the hardcore conservatives? I think, look, if you have a very rigid view in life, in any part of your life, any change is going to trigger, deep emotional responses from you. So I don't think that's a bad thing. Look, I appreciate the maxis, for the sake that they advocated for Bitcoin as a pristine asset. I genuinely do believe in that philosophy as well. But I think, one, Bitcoin is a data layer now, and once you open it up to being a data availability layer, you can index all that data. You can start to index what's happening in the mempool. You can start to do really cool things that people care about. And we're doing it on Bitcoin with the things that have, valid product market fit on other chains, like ordinals, Bitcoin NFTs, let's call them, and meme coins, which have, a very strong product market fit on every other chain. But the underlying thing, between all of this is it's a marketplace at the end of the day. It's a marketplace for ordinals. It's a marketplace for these tokens. And if we can just start with the most simple things, these pillars actually working, because a group of meme coin traders pushed the bar, I think that's a comedic outcome. And yeah, I think Elon Musk also shares a similar philosophy of like the most ironic outcome is the most likely one.
Yeah.
And so the most ironic one here is that meme coins and NFTs change the way that Bitcoin is perceived, and changes the way that we perceive what is possible with Bitcoin in general.
Great answer. Yeah, I agree with everything. I think for me, it's about the scope, right? Like, what is the scope of this process of discovery bring to the table? And with that, comes the possibility. And if there's possibility, people are going to flock, and you essentially are seeing a renaissance. And we did see a renaissance. I wanted to ask you what your thoughts were around kind of like this initial kind of like enthusiasm that arrived with ordinals and runes, but we don't see it being topical at all in the current meta that's floating around, irrespective of whether it's memes or AI or the rest of it. I I was quite sure that we would have seen more momentum around this throughout this bull market. Um, is it still there but really quiet, or do you think it's a case of we'll see it reach those levels again? What does it look like in terms of this narrative going forward?
Yeah, so I think it's a couple things. Like one, it's about expectations, right? And so we're about, look, the happening was April 19th or April 20th. Yeah, I think it's April 20th, as ironic as that was too.
Yeah.
So we're about 9 months into our journey with this new token standard, let's call it, right? And I think, things do take time. And I think people expected the user experience, developer adoption to become, 0 to 100. When the reality is like, look, like by the time you have these assets even accrue some level of value, or probably like 2 months in, of course, so that brought us to like June. Good products, good UX, good experiences, good, problem solving takes much longer than that, quite frankly, especially when you don't have the rails for anything built out. And so over the last month, we've seen this inflection point, I would say, of consumer uh, psychology almost changing, where there starts to be more and more activity around swaps, and maybe people being semi okay with a custodial solution like DotSwap, like RuneStax. I don't think that's necessarily bad. I think it's just we've evolved from realizing that splitting runes and having these traded like cards is not the right UX for fungible tokens. There should always be a liquid market or liquidity in the market at any given point in time. And I think that that's the natural, evolution of Bitcoin. Of course, we can't change the fact that we have 10-minute block times, but I think, to answer your question, is the narrative going to come back? I think it will. It eventually always does. It always comes back, primarily because it's Bitcoin. And I think we will see, massive programmability unlocks with things like Arch and teams that are working on things that are similar to Arch in their dynamic to bring smart contract like programmability to Bitcoin. Something like Oil Wallet doing alkanes, which then wrap your Bitcoin and wrap your runes into a separate meta protocol. I think these are experiments worth having. It's just, are the users going to care about that? Maybe. I think I'm open-minded to see what direction we take. Um, but I think that there's not going to be a 0 to 1 moment or a 0 to 100 even moment on Bitcoin that then brings attention back in the ecosystem. I think you got to be extremely bearish to have that framework of thought. If you just look at the numbers, X first wallet downloads increasing, um, number of holders on chain, number of active participants on chain on Bitcoin growing. So the numbers are, directionally up. So attention, interest, and care or experimentation still continues to go up. Um, and yeah, like we're losing some users along the way when they realize that, okay, cool, like there's not really like fast money, hot money to be made here, at least at this point in time. But these things change on a dime. Like sentiment changes on a dime. Opportunity gets created on a dime. You know, Pump Fund created the opportunity for meme coins on Solana to happen. NFTs created the opportunity for hot money to flow into Ethereum. DeFi created a hot money narrative around Ethereum as well. Base is becoming really popular now with launching AI tokens and DAOs. So yeah, I think there likely is going to be a hot money narrative, hot money vertical down the line for Bitcoin simply because it's Bitcoin. And what does that mean for meme coins and tokens that have been here for months on end, years on end, ordinal collections that have been here for year plus, close to 2 years for some of them. I think that translates very well, and that's my position. I'm very comfy holding what I'm holding with a balance of Bitcoin shrooms, Bitcoin puppets, node bunks, and my selection of runes meme coins, primarily pups and dog. Billy is another interesting one, as well as a couple of others that I think are solid teams. Like the Zbit team has a gaming rune. The Liquidium team has a borrow and lending rune. Magic Eden token, of course, is Bitcoin marketplace token. So I think there's going to be more opportunities. It's the long story short, and I think that brings the attention back.
So what's in store for Pups this year from a token perspective? I mean, are there plans for anything? And then obviously from like NFTs, is there like something that needs to be done there? Tell us what you guys have potentially on the roadmap for 2025.
Yeah, I think like I mentioned earlier, like the centralized exchange narrative, there was just some legal stuff that I needed to figure out to make sure that it's regulatory compliant and so forth, working with lawyers that are guiding the process there. As I want to stay on the right side of the law personally, over the next, well, forever, quite frankly. And so there were some things that I needed to wrap up there to create an entity that then can go out and sign some of these agreements with service partners, partnerships, and do all sorts of things in the way that a accessible meme coin is able to do. But as far as the token side, certainly not trying to do anything with the token. I think it's really it's out there, it's done. Well, it's never really done. It's always growing, of course. And then on like the product side, I guess I'm just experimenting with ways to build. I wouldn't say like utility for pups, but more so like activity with pups. And so a lot of people are doing quite novel things like being able to pay in pups, whether it's like Solana Pay. You can already use your pups to pay for physical goods on Shopify stores. So trying to make integrations there, and we have Pith Oracle, which is going live this week, which allows you to basically build financial products or MemeFi products around borrow, lending, collateral, and Pith is omni-chain, and they will have Bitcoin support at some point. So basically have the first price oracle, which then can allow you to use Pups as collateral, Pups as borrow and lend in some of these DeFi protocols on Sol. And, honestly, Pith, like I said, Pith is omni-chain. So it opens the avenue for Pups to go to any chain out there. And then on the product side, again, like I said, it's not about utility towards Pups because it's a meme coin. But I do want to open up functionality, activity with Pups. So look, I really, long story short, I really like the bonk model. I think fees are great. If this DApp, idea that I have can generate positive fees, then there can be positive burn mechanics to the token itself thereafter. So thinking about ways on how to do that, player to player type of games, leaning towards the YOLO games style of activity. It's a degenerate meme coin. It's a degenerate community. So I think it is best used in further degenerate activities. And so I think it's on brand for Pups to have like a random programmable peer-to-peer games front end that uses Pups to win more Pups type of thing. You're getting where I'm getting with this, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. Working closely with Arch and everything that they enable to build something along those lines. Yeah, I think besides that, we'll see. Like I think I don't necessarily have a long-term plan as this industry moves in monthly quarters, but I have a pretty good idea of what works and what doesn't on a long time horizon based on the success and failure of a lot of other chain meme coins. And there's some that have contributed to the thought of how we've done things so far. And obviously Nom from Bonk is someone that I'm reasonably close with, and he's been good to bounce ideas off of. So yeah, I think long story short is it's certainly not, we're nowhere close to a finish line, and there is never a finish line.
Another great answer, and obviously I'll let the listeners and viewers make of it what they will, but I smell opportunity there, and it'll be really cool to see how you plan on integrating all these ideas into obviously growing this amazing project. And question I've been dying to ask is the kind of like momentum that we've seen with Bitcoin this last kind of like 18 months or so. I mean, it's been over a year. It feels longer. How does that kind of like institutionalization and obviously the interest on such a wider community now affect the potential of ordinals in general? Do we need Bitcoin to pump for ordinals to do well? Or do you believe we'll reach a point where ordinals actually become their own thing, and their own narrative, and are not reliant on all the external factors that we might assume is pushing that narrative?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think, look, if you look at we can compare it to other markets. Do you need the US dollar to pump for art assets to go up in value? The answer is no. So look, as long as there's more interest towards art assets on Bitcoin, then these assets, have a trajectory of going higher. And if there's more, awareness to Bitcoin's native on-chain ecosystem, well, then there's more people that see these assets even existing, and so that brings more attention to them. But it also, means that there is a wealth effect. So if, as people get wealthy in this, Bitcoin season two, what are they going to buy as their Grail PFP assets? I think that they want to buy things that are the most iconic, showpieces of this chain. If you're a true art collector, you cling on to the sub 1K collections. Like Bitcoin Shrooms is a good example of telling the storytelling. It has a vibrant community, but they're not, I mean, there's only 210 pieces, so they're very rare. And but if it's one of those special items. Or you can cling on to things like Bitcoin Puppets and Node Monks and Quantum Cats for all their various reasons. I think Quantum Cats, of course, is a much more like speculative bet. I think there's a lot of people that do, like the art, but I think more people love the speculation aspect around it. Is Udi going to build a chain? Are the Taproot wizards going to launch? Do I need to hold X amount of cats to get a Taproot wizard? So I think the quantum cats have the game theoretics traders and collectors in them, whereas things like Node Monks and Puppets, it's just art. It's a 10K, 10K in one. It's a community, and that's it. Like that's where it starts and finishes. Um, yeah, and then do we need Bitcoin to go up drastically for meme coins to be worth billions of dollars? I don't think so, but it certainly helps when there is a. I mean, it's a pro and con, right? Because as Bitcoin goes up, then and sat if the price doesn't change in Sats, well, then these meme coins have gone up as well. But then maybe people are more inclined to sell as a byproduct of that. Yeah, there's different ways to like look at it. I think speculative assets like meme coins certainly help when the market's going up is a long story short. Whereas art assets, I feel like they're much more sustainable despite all market conditions. But again, a rising tide raises all ships.
Thing I love about what you guys have done is kind of like the world peace slogan. Please share why you guys came up with that and where did it originally start?
So yeah, it's a good question. I mean, that's always been the philosophy of Le Puppet. He published this world peace paper, world peace philosophy, and how Bitcoin puppets are going to promote world peace. And so it's really part of the lore of the collection, and to be like the most on brand to the community and not to deviate from something that they don't understand. So I think, having a token promote good in the ticker name itself is quite powerful. I mean, who wouldn't support world peace is kind of the memetics around it. Um, and yeah, I think that's really like where it stems from. It's very just in tune and core to Bitcoin puppets and their world agenda, quite frankly.
What went through your head when you saw AIXPT change his profile cat to a quantum cat?
I thought this was just a marketing stunt, and maybe it was.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting, but like I know that the account itself does not automatically control its profile picture, and so the developer had to have changed it. So why did they do that? Okay, well, they've been tweeting around Bitcoin quite a lot, and I think the Quantum Cats were a hot collection. So what other collection would it change to? Um, Now, I don't want to speculate as to like why it did that or why the dev thought it was a good idea or experiment. Um, I just know that AI XPT certainly likes Bitcoin
Yeah.
as a tradable concept, and look, I thought it was interesting, but I didn't look too far into the fact that I'm not viewing this as like, wow, AI bought its own, quantum cat and changed its own profile picture on Twitter. Yeah, I'd like to think that I'm smart enough that I know that's not necessarily possible at this point, or at least not integrated at this point. Not that it's not possible.
Yeah, I think for me it was just a kind of like a, in many ways, a cool gesture, irrespective of who or what was involved in that process. I think the attention to ordinals is as important as, punks were way back. I mean, I think the value of punks from a sentiment basis has diminished because of who now owns that brand. But I think in general, we look at those admirable NFT collections and we think punks, like, and I think in many ways the cats are at that same level or are definitely moving in that direction. And I think as this narrative grows and becomes more integrated into the mindset of Bitcoin, and I think, these are the kind of collections that people are going to be looking at in the future. And I hope they do. Um, so let's see how that plays out. Have you guys ever thought of creating a Pups AI agent?
Yeah, it's been a thought in the community. I think, look, I'm just very mindful in short-term trends, and the other aspect of it is like long-term upkeep, right? So
Yeah.
how much value does it bring in the short term? And if the short-term impact is very high, but the long-term mate, excuse me,
No worries.
um, if the long-term maintenance aspect to it is quite high, where there's going to be this requirement to constantly iterate on this AI agent, and it's not necessarily my angle of expertise. I think it does help awareness, but it's also been so easy to spin up an AI agent that it seems like every coin has one. So I think if you were early to it, you got, I would say, an increased attention lift. And then right now, well, like how much value does that bring? And I think that not doing one early and having to upkeep it actually saved us from something that at this point would not really be a huge value add. There are Bitcoin puppets AI agents out there, and I'd much rather just have that be run by someone else, and not have to be monitored and have to be on brand. I don't think Pups Pups is supposed to be a funny artistic Bitcoin meme coin, and it's not meant to be a showcase of AI tech on Bitcoin. It's not really um, in line with what it was intentionally, I would say, planned for, or at least culturally what it's planned for. It's like a culture mission coin rather than an AI agent. Um, yeah, AI automated account with a meme coin.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think it is like there is that kind of like double-edged sword, It's like if you introduce it, you get the attention, right? But then you got to look after it, you got to maintain it, you got to service it essentially. And then you also run the risk of kind of like this narrative fading, and what do you then do? I mean, I think you're better off just sticking to the traditional approach and just doing
I,
it.
I just like to stick with fundamentals, right? Like we,
Yeah.
we know good tokenomics is a net positive. It causes, additional buy pressure on the token thereafter. So I'd much rather be focused on building, functionality to the token itself, and some sort of burn mechanism, than trying to build more attention, hot money types to to the asset itself.
Mm. So, in terms of the current project that you guys have, I know that we got into, what's potentially coming. Is there discussion around kind of like expanding this collection in some way or another, or is it kind of like, okay, well, we're gonna keep it the way that it is, and we don't really need to do anything extra? Or do you think, in terms of how you guys are evolving, that might be a necessary thing to do to create more interest to
Yeah,
grow the base?
I think, look, like the art is left to the puppet. If he wants to create another collection, he's an artist. He will likely create another collection. Is it going to be better than Bitcoin Puppets? Know him? I don't know. Is it going to be aligned with Bitcoin Puppets and Opium? Again, I don't know. I think he might veer off and try something different down the line in whatever direction he wants to undertake it. I think there's been countless of derivatives of puppets and Gizmo and you name it out there, and all of his pieces, Kika, and some Slug. But as far as like the focus for Pups to veer out and go beyond, like I don't think we're gonna be interested in launching another token. This is not meant to be like one of those DeFi Ponzi's where you stake Pups for Pups 2.0 or anything like that. Like it's just it's meant to be like a pure meme coin. It's meant to be something that has the potential to outlast my own individual contributor abilities, down the line. Or anybody's really, like, Sheeb or Doge. They exist because someone in the community cares, and that's it. I think Pups as a token is like that is a long-term success, that this asset exists independent of any single contributor, and that's how you get to a functional, properly decentralized state. I view this as like it's a Bitcoin meme coin, so it has to have the ethos of Bitcoin, and so once it proliferates itself, sufficiently so, and then that's it. Like it's there, and it's a set and forget, you know, meme coin. I think certainly Dog does that even more so than Pups. But I think right now is important to be active because it does take a tangible push from someone to make some of these key decisions, key integrations, key pushes to advance the technology in some way, shape, or form, or integrate to this new thing. And if you don't have that, well, you're never really going to be fully integrated with what's coming on Bitcoin. So that's my position on it. It's much more similar to like a Bonk than it is Bitcoin right now, but I'm sure Bonk down the line obviously wants to be fully autonomous, fully decentralized. That's kind of how their ethos is structured as well. They have the Bonk DAO, which is ran by core, creators of Bonk. But down the line, of course, they want this to survive and outlive anything else and be founderless, so to speak.
So, I mean, that's obviously an ethos that you have mentioned already. That's an ethos that you hold very close and true to who you are as a person. I mean, are you guys looking at potentially doing what they did from an airdrop perspective? If there is in fact an airdrop on the horizon, I mean, is it
I
about
mean,
that? What do you?
I think we've already done that, right? Like
Yeah,
we've already done two airdrops, one for the BRC-20, one for the pre-runes ordinals, and so I don't think that there's going to be more airdrops. If it is, it's probably not going to be tied to something that ourselves, or maybe, I mean, the community. I mean, the community could orchestrate anything. Quite frankly, they could orchestrate another airdrop to this. There's nothing really like preventing them to do so.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it would be fundamentally flawed to fragment and dilute the attention from something that doesn't feel, entirely put together just yet, and cut the journey off short just to, I don't know. There's quite a lot of founders that would make that judgment call and make a new token or promote a new token, but there's nothing really like driving me to do that. There would be no sum of money that would basically, push me in that direction. I'm very fundamentally aligned with this is a passion project, and I need Pups to do well. I don't need a new token to do well.
Cool. I
Or
like.
yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, we're about to hit the top of the hour.
Sure.
Before we leave and call it, are there any kind of like closing thoughts that you'd like to put out there to those who are listening?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's very easy to get, caught up in this emotional roller coaster of it's all over and then we're so back. But I think if you stay, moderately detached from that and think about how far we've gone from Bitcoin in the last 2 years and the level of experimentation that we've had over that time frame. To think that there's not going to be high quality developers, high quality experimenters coming into Bitcoin, I think would just be a foolish and extremely bearish take. And so, I think 2025, and I've also said this for 2024, but I think I was maybe, hesitant with a question mark in 2024. But I feel extremely confident that 2025 is going to unlock a huge amount of experimentation and opportunity within Bitcoin. And I think that brings the narrative, attention, and interest back to Bitcoin. And I think it also causes a lot of these very high quality builders to consider positioning their products to Bitcoin or even building new ones on Bitcoin. And there is no shortage of money on the sidelines to back these teams. And a lot of VCs and so forth have a very valid commitment that they see this as a $100+ billion opportunity, and it's just about like who captures this. But I think it's for me, I'm very excited to see what we can do with it, and how what we do with it then impacts some of the core Bitcoin dev decisions, of making small incremental improvements to Bitcoin Core that then align with doing even more and bringing more fees to Bitcoin and so forth. So I think it'll be a very exciting year, and it positions ourselves for a pretty insane 2026 when we start to get into some of the very hard conversations with core devs of, look, we have this on Bitcoin now. What's going on?
What's going on indeed. Love what you guys are doing. Wish you the best. And yeah, we obviously will be watching what you guys are doing. And yeah, thanks, Joe, for taking the time out. I know you're super busy. It took us a couple of tries to get together, but I'm glad we finally did it. And yeah, once again, appreciate it. Appreciate what you guys are doing, and all the best, man.
Yeah, likewise. Appreciate you having me. This has been a fun little show. Yeah, and happy to have been sharing basically everything about Pups and myself with your audience. Thanks
Cool.
for having me, Jedi.
It's a pleasure. Thanks everyone for joining us. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends. Yeah, and just connect with the Pups guys. If you don't know who they are, they're on Twitter. They're everywhere really. Just do a search. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Take it easy. Peace out.
Quick one, nothing here is financial advice. It's for entertainment and educational purposes only. Always do your own research or speak to a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Like and subscribe.